Have you ever opened a carton of McDonald's fries, planning to eat just one? Then somehow, another, then another, until you suddenly look down and realize they're almost gone. Most people assume it's simple. The fries just taste good. End of story. But here's the strange part. That feeling often begins before you ever take the first bite, before the first fry, before you unwrap the burger. Sometimes, before you've even ordered, because long before you're eating McDonald's, your brain has often already started wanting it. Not because you're hungry, not because you carefully compared every fast food restaurant, but because something about the experience has already begun. And once you recognize what McDonald's is actually building, it's surprisingly difficult to unsee. This channel is all about uncovering the hidden psychology behind the world's biggest businesses, so you can recognize the systems influencing your money, your decisions, and your everyday life. At first, McDonald's seems incredibly straightforward. They sell burgers, fries, chicken nuggets, soft drinks. Of course, people keep coming back. The food tastes good. End of story. Except, that's not actually what makes McDonald's so fascinating. Because if their only goal were to make good fries, they wouldn't need to think about everything that happens before the first bite. Instead, they've built something much more intentional, an experience that quietly begins, long before you start eating, something that changes how you anticipate the food, how you recognize the brand, and even how quickly your brain starts craving it. And the fascinating part is that you usually don't notice it happening. By the end of this video, you'll understand why McDonald's isn't simply serving fries. It's building an experience that starts before you taste the food, and why one of the company's simplest products became the doorway to something much bigger. So where does that craving actually begin? Most people would probably say, the first bite. After all, that's when you finally taste the fries. That's when you decide if they're good. That's when the experience begins, right? Not exactly. Think about the last time you craved McDonald's, not the last time you ate there, the last time it randomly popped into your head. What happened first? Did you suddenly become hungry? Or did something remind you of McDonald's? Before you ever thought about eating? Maybe you drove past one. Maybe someone walked by carrying a paper bag. Maybe you caught that unmistakable smell drifting through the air. Or maybe all it took was seeing those golden arches from the highway. It's strange when you think about it, because before you've tasted anything, before you've ordered, before you've even decided where you're going, McDonald's has already entered your mind, which raises an interesting question. If craving starts before the first bite, then maybe the first bite isn't where the experience actually begins. Maybe it starts somewhere else entirely. And if that's true, the fries might not be the product we've been paying attention to. They might just be the clue. Take the smell. Ask almost anyone what McDonald's fries smell like, and they can usually imagine it instantly. Not because they're eating them, because they've smelled them so many times before. Walking through a mall, driving past a restaurant, opening the bag in the car, sitting next to someone at the airport, long before the fries ever reach your mouth. Their presence has already announced itself. That's unusual. Most foods only matter once you're eating them. McDonald's fries seem to matter before that. But here's what's fascinating. That still doesn't explain everything. Lots of restaurants smell good. Fresh pizza, movie theater popcorn, freshly baked cookies. So why is McDonald's different? Maybe the answer isn't the smell itself. Maybe it's what the smell represents. Because the moment you recognize it, your brain doesn't just think, those are fries. It starts remembering the entire experience that usually comes next. The cold drink, the warm bag sitting in your lap, the sound of the paper wrapper, the drive home, the quick stop after work, the late-night meal with friends, the road trip, the lunch break. One smell somehow brings all of that with it. Which is interesting, because now the fries aren't just food anymore. They're a signal, a reminder that an experience you've had dozens, maybe hundreds, of times is about to happen again. But even that isn't enough to explain McDonald's, because recognizing a smell is one thing. Recognizing an entire experience is something else. Think about walking into a McDonald's you've never visited before. Maybe it's across the country, maybe it's in another country entirely, yet somehow, almost nothing feels unfamiliar. You know where to order, you know roughly where the drinks are, you know what the packaging will look like, you know what the fries will taste like, you know what opening that red carton feels like. Before you've even ordered, your brain already knows what kind of experience it's about to have. And that's surprisingly rare. Most businesses have to introduce themselves. McDonald's usually doesn't. It feels familiar almost immediately. Now here's the interesting part. Familiarity changes the way we make decisions. When something feels predictable, we spend less time wondering what we're going to get. There's less uncertainty, less hesitation. The experience already feels known. And when enough of those familiar moments build up over years, something subtle starts to happen. You stop encountering McDonald's only inside the restaurant. You start encountering it everywhere. A billboard during your morning commute, a cup sitting on someone's desk, a delivery driver carrying a familiar paper bag, a Happy Meal in a shopping cart, a commercial during a football game, a drive-through glowing late at night. One reminder by itself doesn't seem very important, but together, they quietly make McDonald's feel like it's always somewhere nearby, always familiar, always recognizable. And maybe that's why craving McDonald's can feel so spontaneous, because what feels like a sudden decision may actually be the result of dozens of tiny reminders that came long before you noticed them. But there's still one problem. Even familiarity doesn't completely explain it. Lots of brands are familiar, lots of restaurants are recognizable, lots of companies have memorable logos, yet very few create the kind of anticipation that McDonald's does. So if it isn't just the fries, and it isn't just the smell, and it isn't just familiarity, then what exactly has McDonald's been building all this time? Because once you see the answer, you stop looking at McDonald's as a restaurant that simply serves food. You start seeing it as something much bigger. So what has McDonald's actually been building all this time? It's tempting to say. They've built one of the most recognizable fast food brands in the world, and that's true. But it still doesn't quite capture what's happening. Because logos don't make your mouth water. Colors don't suddenly make you crave fries. And a familiar building by itself doesn't explain why so many people can picture the experience before they ever walk inside. The real product isn't just burgers, or fries, or even fast food, it's anticipation. McDonald's has spent decades building an experience your brain can begin almost instantly. Sometimes from a smell, sometimes from a logo, sometimes from nothing more than driving past a familiar restaurant. The food is obviously important, but by the time you take the first bite, something much more valuable has often already happened. You've started expecting it, and expectations shape experiences in powerful ways. When you already know what something will taste like, what it will smell like, how it will feel, and even how the moment will fit into your day, your brain isn't starting from zero. It's continuing a story it already recognizes. That's why the fries matter. Not because they're simply delicious, but because they're one of the clearest signals that the experience has begun. That unmistakable smell. The warm carton in your hand, the familiar red packaging, they're not isolated details. They're cues. Each one quietly tells your brain, you know what comes next. And over time, those cues become easier and easier to recognize. Not because McDonald's changed the way your brain works, because it learned how your brain already works. Humans naturally learn through repeated experiences. We connect places with emotions, smells with memories, objects with routines. Companies don't create those psychological systems. They build around them. That's what McDonald's has done so effectively. It didn't invent anticipation. It built an experience around it. And once you see that, you start noticing something interesting. This isn't really a story about fries anymore. It's a story about how businesses become part of everyday life. The companies we remember most aren't always the ones with the best products. Often, they're the ones that understand how people naturally experience the world and quietly design around those experiences. Bath and Body Works does it through scent. McDonald's does it through anticipation. Another company might do it through convenience, or status, or scarcity. The experience changes, but the psychology rarely does. And that's what makes studying businesses so fascinating. They're often treated as collections of products or clever marketing campaigns, but underneath all of that, they're really studies in human behavior. Every successful company is asking the same question: what do people naturally respond to? And how can we build an experience around it? McDonald's answered that question long before you opened your first carton of fries, not by teaching you to crave food, but by learning how anticipation, familiarity, and repeated experiences naturally shape the way people make decisions. And once you understand that, you don't just see McDonald's differently. The next time you catch that familiar smell in a parking lot, or spot the golden arches from the highway, or suddenly think, McDonald's actually sounds good right now, you'll recognize something you probably never noticed before. The experience didn't begin with your hunger. It began long before that.